educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in today. I have a guest that I don't normally have on the show. He is a dynamic entrepreneur and poet. He has seamlessly blended his creative and business skills to build eReleases into a leading press release distribution platform. And with over 25 years of experience in public relations and marketing, he has significantly impacted small businesses, authors, and startups by securing remarkable media coverage. His journey exemplifies the power of resilience, innovation, and mindfulness in business, demonstrating how one can successfully merge creativity with the entrepreneurial acumen to achieve a sustained success. I thank y'all very much for listening today. And like I said, this is going to be from a different perspective, y'all. Thank you, Mickie, for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. So, you've built this organization talking about media coverage, and a lot of times we don't know what that really means, right? We especially because people have such a negative thought behind it, unfortunately, and whether or not it's really effective. So really, what is it? What is a real press release?
So a press release is just simply an announcement to the media. Mm-hmm. It's usually written in the third person. Some people might recognize it. Usually says for immediate release, then a headline. There can be a subhead. Then there's usually a city and state. It's usually where your business is located. Like I think Microsoft is usually Redmond, Washington, and a lot of books and authors usually say New York because that's sort of the publishing capital, regardless of where they personally might be located. And there's usually a few paragraphs. Towards the end, there might be a section that's got about company or about person. And it's usually, we call that the boilerplate. And it's a paragraph that usually gets recycled. You use it in every press release. You can update it as you go, but just a little bit of just your elevator pitch of who you are or who your company is. And then there might be a media contact as well. And these are just disseminated to the media in the hopes that they will use that as the building blocks for writing an article. The goal isn't to get the press release put on a bunch of websites. A little bit of that happens through syndication, but don't get excited by syndication because it happens pretty much everywhere. And you can pay $99 and get on a couple hundred websites. And that's not really any real value because usually the locations on these websites are not places that if you went to the website and you did a search, your press release would come up. They're usually subdomains, or in many cases, they're just WordPress little news sites that the company set up. And so it really isn't that valuable. What you're looking for are these earned media articles, and that's what we call it when a journalist writes about you. When they write an original article about you, we call that earned media because you've earned it. It's unique, it's original, and it really sends a strong signal to people when they see earned media because it's like huge credibility. It's almost like an implied endorsement or social proof when a journalist writes about you. You appear in an article in the New York Times. That's a big deal. And it really does convey a lot of credibility. And it creates a signal of trust among the people who read it. And that's why, when people do get earned media, they find that they can get really good customers, the types who are loyal, the type who aren't really price sensitive, because when they read that, they have sort of like a emotional response and they just want to do business with you. It's the same thing that if you've ever read a blog post or an article about a Kickstarter campaign or Indiegogo campaign, and you hear about this person who's like, I just wanted this one simple thing that is like something that's already out there, but it also needs to do this. And I tried to find out something like this has to exist, and it doesn't. And I went to them and said, "Hey, could you make this tweak and do that?" And they're like, "No, we're not interested." And it's like, "Oh, do I have to do this myself?" And then I was just like, "I will go through the effort of doing this, but I want to make sure that I'm not alone in this world and that others are interested." And all of a sudden, I find myself, spending $44 to back somebody to create some I don't know, kitty litter shovel that I really didn't need, but I just wanted to support this guy because he had found something that he thought was unique in the marketplace and wanted to help get that out there. And that's so common. We have this goodwill that we create when we read about others. They humanizes them to us. It's the reason that everybody that appears on Shark Tank, one of the first things they do is talk about their story. You know, what caused them to create the business or the product. And often it's a vulnerability or an obstacle they overcame, like they lost a loved one, or they just went through a divorce, or, a father died and they remembered they used to do this thing with the father. And they're like, I wonder if I could turn that into a business. And it gets us to root for them and gives us this, gives an immediate empathy towards them. And, that's powerful. Humanity is the most important marketing aspect that people don't really take advantage of. And with the media, it really does allow you to do that, to really break through and be a person and let your guard down and share with others.
So I don't have a product that I feel like is important enough to put out there. This sounds like an investment. Yeah, you said it's $99 possibly, but I don't know. I'm not sure whether or not I need to really invest into getting a press release for my organization because I don't feel like it's important enough. Is that something that I really should do?
It really depends on the organization. If you're in certain areas like charities, it is hard to get media attention for charities, and you wouldn't think it would be. But I think that charities are expected to do good. And I think they're also expected to do the right thing and to make a benefit. So you really have to have something that's very compelling for the media to get interested in charities. And that's a shame because charities are often looking for what are some of the ways in which we can market ourselves best. There are other industries that the media is just not interested in. Crypto. People hawking crypto. We used to get a lot of press releases for crypto, and the Newswire, I was like, "Are you okay with this?" And they're like, "Sure." And what I found is like 2/3 of my crypto clients used fake credit cards that they got off the dark web. And I would say over the past 5 years, we've had about 20 fraudulent credit cards, and I would say 18 of them were in the crypto arena. So we just quit taking them. It's just like, no, we don't want that. And then there's also certain things that the Newswire it just doesn't send. It's a restriction, like supplements. Generally, if you're promoting vitamin D product and yours is good to absorb and stuff like that's great. But what people do is they get on there and they like our elderberry syrup cures viruses. It prevents COVID. Don't vaccinate your kids. Take our elderberry syrup. And all of a sudden, you're making lots of medical claims, and anything like that, the Newswire doesn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And I know I've used this word Newswire. What is the Newswire? So in the U.S., there's a duopoly of newswires. It's Business Wire and PR Newswire. Our releases go out over PR Newswire. And what these are places that distribute press releases to the media. The media have access. They can log in, and it creates a very customized feed for them of releases that are specifically about what they write about and cover. There was a third player years ago, but they made some inroads, and then over the last 10 years, there's been a lot of reshuffling in the news world, and journalists are expected to do more with less. And so a journalist who might be expected to write 3 to 4 stories a week is now maybe expected to write 2 to 3 stories a day. And so all result, they don't have time to jump in 3 or 4 ponds. They just said, you know what, the 2 biggest ponds are PR Newswire and Business Wire. That's the only place we're going to fish. And so that third wire did a pivot, and they just said, hey, if you're a publicly traded company, we meet disclosure according to the SEC. And do you really want journalists to look very carefully at your numbers? And so and we're a lot cheaper. So that was their pivot. And outside of that, if there's a company with Wire in its name that is not Business Wire and PR Newswire, it's not a wire or press releases like the Associated Press, Reuters, UPI, United Press International, and maybe a couple of others that you might recognize. They move articles that they've written, and they might you might be able to send them a press release, or if you're on the wire, they might see your press release. But everything they send out is written by them and copyrighted by them, because their business model is they get a licensing fee from newspapers and other places that use their content. So if I'm an editor at the Baltimore Sun and I'm getting ready to leave at 5 p.m. To go home to my wife who just made dinner, and all of a sudden Supreme Court announces a really big thing, I know that my boss could just pull the article from the Associated Press. It'll be a very good article because they have a really great reputation, and it's just a licensing fee that's paid to them, and we don't have to worry about it. And outside of that, there are a bunch of websites out there that purport to distribute your press release. They're all involved in syndication only, and they pretty much do not reach journalists. And so there's one that you pay $500 to, and they'll get you on 700 websites, and I guarantee you probably won't get 30 eyeballs to see it. The only people they'll see are bots and things like that, and it really doesn't help you because none of these are real articles. They're just a press release replicated. And what we're looking for is that earned media. It's a journalist transformed it, turned it into an original article, and posted it on their website. I have never, ever, ever heard of anybody that used syndication and a company for syndication and had their phones ring or get orders. But if you go to my website, eReleases.com, and click on case studies, the first one that's up there is a very short-lived effort that was during the pandemic to help restaurants that were closed during the pandemic, called the Dining Bond Initiative. And we hit send on that press release. It went over the wire. Over 100 places picked it up. All the big places, Wall Street Journal and Washington Post and places like that picked it up, but also dozens and dozens of papers across the United States. And that generated over $10 million in revenue. Wow. And so that's what happens when you reach journalists is articles get written. And all of these were original articles. Over 100 original articles were written by journalists, and that conveyed to people to want to get involved. And the reason I think it did so well is it was a time where there was some uncertainty. We were sent home for 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and we didn't know what was going on. And here was something that was positive news. And also it sort of spoke to you. It's like if I had a favorite restaurant that I went to on my anniversary and I wanted to ensure it was open, I could call or contact them. And if they could get a hold of that restaurant, I could then give a donation that would go directly to them, and it'd be backed through a dining bond or a gift certificate type thing. And, no guarantee that they're going to stay in business, but the hope is that this will help them a little bit so that they will. And so it did extremely, extremely well. And that's the potential of earned media, where, a $349 distribution through me, I didn't charge them, of course, but that's what it would have costed. $349 yielded over $10 million in revenue. And so that's the real potential of, reaching journalists and having them write earned media about you. It really can make a huge difference to people. I've had one client who only got one article, and it was in waste management trade publication for people in the waste management space. But they were contacted by a city in Australia and said, hey, could you create a facility here? And the next thing you know, they've signed I think it's either a $30 to $40 million contract. Okay. And so, these are the things that happen when you get out there in front of others in your industry, your customers. If you get an article about you in front of your customers, there's the potential that they would want to do business with you. And that only makes sense.
So, Mickie, I don't even know where to begin because you said you gave me so much information. So I'm going to start here. I'll start from the beginning. could someone, the everyday person, create their own press release? Is it really advantageous for them to take that leap?
I mean, it can be. I mean, what is it that you're fishing with? Is what I always tell people. What is it that you're promoting? If you're promoting that you just hired Helen as a new associate in HR, save your money. That's not newsworthy, and the media is not really going to be receptive to it. But if you have a product that you created, and you feel it does something different in the industry than every other product, and you feel like this is my future, this is my business, potentially that's it. The thing to watch out for is so many product launch type press releases that we get follow sort of the model that everybody else does. We have a new product. Here's a list of features. Here's a page to learn more and buy it. And what's missing is a story. Journalists write in a story format. They like to follow a story arc. There's no story arc there. It's just a list of features. In some cases, it's just bullets, and that's it. So, if you went back to that press release and you incorporated a use case study, someone who beta tested it, and it's like, hey, this company was losing 7% a year, and they used our product over 90 days. And at the end of it, they were able to forecast that they're going to have a profit of 3% this year. And, that's transformative. Yeah. And all of a sudden you have a quote by them. That's more of a story arc. So that makes a journalist who's a gatekeeper trying to decide, is this information going to educate or entertain my audience? And sometimes it needs to do both. Does it do it? That comes a lot more towards that goal of having a story arc and engaging, educating, and potentially entertaining that audience. And so you have to sort of fashion it, thinking of the journalists, and what their goal is. And while this is an important product to you, how can you make it important to that journalist? Or even more importantly, how can I make it important to the audience that journalist is being protective of? And if you can figure that out, that's the secret sauce. You can get published all day long if you can write copy and cover an angle that really engages and entertains, delights, an audience out there. And so story is one of the easiest things to incorporate into a press release to sort of solve that. Other things are data points, like if you have a logistics software solution, and one of the things you could say is look out there and find what the publicly available data is. And maybe it's like, hey, 67% of all new transportation companies fell in the first 5 years. And because of that, our software addresses the number one, variable in the logistics and transportation world, and that is getting cost under control. And so all of a sudden the stakes are there that shows why your product is so important. So incorporating little bits and pieces of all of this, a story, publicly available data points, having an amazing quote. So many quotes that we get, they just look like they've been written by committee or they've been written by AI. They're safe. No one's ever going to be fired for this quote, but no one's ever going to be energized or remember it. And so when I say a great quote, it could be your creative flourish, that you say something that's just beautiful. But more likely for most businesses, it's just saying something strong and powerful. And by doing that, it's condensing it. It is to, get it as tight and controlled so that you have said it very succinctly with power and conviction. And it just stands. If that journalist was to take that quote out or to just paraphrase what you said, there'd be a loss. If you had read it before, you go, I ache for what was written there before. That's how you have a really good quote. And that's one of the easiest ways to ensure that you get picked up. Because if a journalist is looking at two press releases and they're about the same in newsworthiness, but one has an amazing quote, they know that they can craft a good article around that. And that quote's going to make that article stand out way more than the other one, where the quote is just safe and not really powerful.
Wow. So as I'm listening to you again, my mind is going wild. So I'm saying that because I have some clients, some people that are around that are they have not closed their feedback loop. So like you said about this story, right? How I've taken or I've created something and how it has affected other people. So now I have that, I understand that story. But how about that story where I've created a company or organization that's actually helped me to grow? Is that a good enough or strong enough story? Can that be worked out? Because I do have one client that feels as though her story is very powerful and she's doing pretty well. But she just hasn't gotten any feedback from the people that she serves.
Right. So I think, so you're saying that she's making a difference, she feels, to these people, but she's not getting their words.
Yes.
And their, okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to ask for it. You have to put them on the spot. You have to say, hey, I'm working on some marketing, and I would love to have some quotes by you about how I've been to work with. And, also if you have things that are constructive that you feel like I didn't do well, I would love for you to privately share that with me as well. And so sometimes if you don't ask for it, you don't get it. And so you have to sort of, close the cycle where you do ask for their feedback.
Yeah.
If she feels she's making a real difference, it's quite likely she is, but people just don't volunteer stuff unless they're prompted to do so. So I would feel just very comfortable just saying, hey, I'm just reaching out to all the people that I've served and am currently serving, and I'm wanting to get some copy for my website and for other marketing and things like that. So I would just love for you to come up with a sentence or two about what it was like working for me. And and also couch it how you want it. If you just say how it was working with me, a lot of people are going to say, oh, this person is just a delight. They're great. Well, I want something a little bit more. It's like, could you try to provide as much details as possible? If there's, numbers or a meaningful change, try to substantiate as much as you can, where someone's like, oh, this person's a delight to work. They really made a difference to my business. This person was amazing to work with. My business is up 23% since working with her. And I know it's all because of the things I implemented after speaking with her. The second one's so much better because we have a number, a data point. One of the things I talked about with PR. So you kind of have to prompt them for it as well. You're not saying make stuff up, but just say, rather than just talking about, warm and fuzzy language, I'm really looking for, tangible outcomes that you got. And all of a sudden, I think that will help people to be prompted to write a sentence or two and get that back to her. And then you'd be able to sort of utilize that, maybe create sort of that use case study, as well as have language to put on your website and in your marketing materials about some of the actual outcomes you've achieved. If you don't ask people, you don't know. And one of the easiest things to do is to put a client spotlight out there where say, hey, I'm doing a newsletter every month or every week, and I'd like to put the spotlight on businesses that I'm working with that are having great outcomes. And all of a sudden I'd like to share those with other business owners. And they look at it as like, wow, this could open the doors with me to network with some other business owners and maybe get some more business. So yeah, I've had some good outcomes. I'm now invested for putting that out there, and I want to make a very convincing and strong argument for this person. And so the client spotlight is a great way to bring them in and get them invested in wanting to share their positive outcomes.
Wow, Mickie. It's a whole lot. Like, again, you keep giving me so much information, man. I don't know which way to go. But Mickie, ultimately, because people are looking for this type of service and they're not sure what to write or how to get this information, how to get their products out there, and getting someone to write it from a professional perspective, i.e., like you said, not AI, right? So where can they find you to get this information, to get a consult about this, and maybe help them to understand really what their business really is about? Because it sounds like once you start getting them into the weeds, maybe they can understand their why and everything else that they got going on. So where can they find out and reach out to you?
Sure. So my website is eReleases.com. My social media is on the lower right of that website. It's my direct LinkedIn, so feel free to reach out to me there. But if you have any questions or you're just looking for some guidance, feel free to call or email through the website, as well as chat. You'll only speak to editors. We have no salespeople, and we're pretty helpful. I do have a free masterclass. It's a video that's less than an hour. I had to make it that way because people's attention spans aren't what they used to be. And I think the last course that I bought, I realized was 30 hours of video. And I just said, I don't have that.
Right.
You know, 30 hours of video is like 120 hours of my time. I have ADHD. I got to stop. I got to think about it. I got to meditate on it. I got to take notes. So that I just like, that's 3 months of my life, or many weeks. And so this is a less than an hour long video, and it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And basically what I noticed is that 97% of press releases out there do not generate earned media. And I was like, if we look at the 3% that do generate earned media, can we find patterns? And some of the best patterns are in there. And so if you built a PR campaign of 6 to 8 releases, and let's say you worked on those over a year, if you followed these strategic types of press releases, you would get media pickup. Maybe not every press release, but I guarantee you're going to have more successes than failures. And there's one strategy in there that I've never had fail. Everybody who follows that model succeeds and gets earned media, often as many as 8 to 14 articles from that one press release. And that's how, you know, doing a survey or study within your industry. And it sounds like a big ask, but I break it down and make it something that is very doable for anyone and is not that difficult. And you don't have to get out there and network and find hundreds of people to take your survey. There are people out there that will push your survey out for free in exchange for you just giving them a mention in a press release that you're issuing over the wire. So it's really valuable. And again, that's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. And there's no charge. And it's just really great information.
Sure, no problem. And of course, that information will be in the show notes. So I did go on there. So I did review the website. So it's right there, y'all. So of course, like I said, it will be in the show notes. But Mickie, I thank you very much for coming on the show. But here again, I got to ask you my world famous question before I let you go, man. My world famous would you rather question. Now, would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
I'm going to choose 3 doors.
And why 3 doors?
I think that when you're challenged with several options, you're often not felt with that deep regret of that one path that you didn't choose. And I think that so many people take a path and they're constantly going, did I take the right path? Did I take the right path? And I think if you choose, you know, multiple doors, you have 3, and you choose one, you're like, well, even if I chose another one, it may be worse than this. It could be better. It could be worse. I don't know. But I feel like, you know, there were several options, and I chose this one, and I'm committing to it. And I think that for me, it's the odds that they play against that. I have a little bit less regret when there's like, you know, multiple options.
Okay. And I can understand. I could see that because most of us would probably be kicking ourselves if we went the right way and then like, oh, it wasn't where we wanted. We should have gone left. So I could get that. I get that feeling. But I thank you very much for answering the question. There's no parameters. You know, I thank you for answering it honestly. And it just helps all of us to understand maybe how should I go through the process of coming to a conclusion or whatever it is, you know, whatever is being brought to me. So I thank you very much for answering that for me.
Sure. You're very welcome.
Sure, no problem. And again, thank you very much for coming on the show. And all the information will be in the show notes. And thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I will talk to y'all a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?